Hey everyone, welcome to another Bookmore show. It's Stuart here with Betsy. How's it going, Betsy?
Fantastic. Great to be here again.
I think I should start mixing up that, varying that intro, or just record it and use the same one, because I kind of
Oh, there
was
you go.
listening to last week's show just to refresh my mind what we were talking about a few minutes before we started recording, and I think the intro is identical, so we can either save some time and make it more efficient, or probably the better idea is just to add a bit more variety into it. So
Let's try. Yeah, we'll try that.
something different next week. Anyway, moving on. So thanks everyone for joining in again. We've got a bit of a different show. The last couple of episodes we've talked about Facebook, and we do actually there's a couple more topics that we wanted to get to, but two Facebook shows in a row is certainly enough for me and probably everyone else. So we'll leave the last wrap up on the last couple of topics for Facebook to a couple of weeks' time. And today we wanted to talk about scorecard books. I think we mentioned it briefly in the last show as a slightly different type of book, but we wanted to dive into that a little bit more now and share some ideas with people of how to approach the book as a tool within the kind of lead funnel in a little bit of a different way. So sound good?
I think it's a great topic to discuss. Yes.
Perfect. So I have coffee here, so hopefully my voice is going to keep going for the next 30 minutes.
Perfect.
And we should be good. So the scorecard books, I can't remember the exact context in which it came up last time, but broadly we're looking at engaging people who would be interested in the book, engaging them in a way that starts a conversation and then develops that conversation over time. So anyone that's listened to the last episode, or previous episodes rather, will know that we talk quite a lot about using books in Profit Activator number 2. So that's identifying and helping people raise their hand as interested. The kind of tagline of the company is making invisible leads visible, and a book is a fantastic way of doing that because you get to share a concept with an interested audience, a reader who's interested in the subject, and really introduce the idea and start a conversation and sow the seed of some next steps that takes them from the question that's being answered on the cover. So we talk a lot about the importance of titles. So it takes them from that title through the idea, develops it into what is then on the back cover copy, and the back cover then has a call to action, some steps that people can take to kind of develop that conversation and take it further. So I think most people are quite familiar with that. Just before we started recording, we were looking through the gallery of titles to pull up some examples, and probably I'd say about 90% of people are really in that camp of thinking about a book as a way of getting invisible leads to raise their hand. So that kind of, I know you have a lot of conversations with some people that do come on board, some people that don't, but a lot of those early stage conversations, is that kind of the feeling you get as well? People are very familiar with the idea of using it at that stage.
Absolutely, I do. Very rarely do I have someone that doesn't understand, what's going on and how to use it and stuff. But for the most point, I think people listen to us and listen to Dean and followed along. So yeah, definitely. People are educated more than you would think, for sure.
I think it's a nice, easy way of people can conceptualize it pretty easily as well. The kind of whole lead generation piece of marrying up a conversation or trying to match a conversation that's already going on in their mind with an offer where you can compel people to raise their hand. It's whether it's a book or another opt-in cookie, it's something that people can kind of grab onto. So today then we're going to talk about slightly different types of books. So mapping it back to the 8 profit activators, which is again the framework that we use to really contextualize these early steps. Then profit activator number 1, choose a single target market, because it's easier and more straightforward to be specific rather than trying to be all things to all people, one campaign at a time. Profit activator number 2 is give people an easy way to raise their hand and compel them to identify themselves. So this pool of invisible people, how you can get them to raise their hand. And then profit activator number 3 is educate and motivate people over time towards taking that next step, towards making a decision to either join a course that you're offering or buy a product from you. The key to that stage is the kind of when they're ready. So staying in touch with people over the longer duration, so that they've had a thought where your conversation is matched with that. They've raised their hand, they've identified themselves. the likelihood of them converting immediately is lower than the likelihood of them converting over time. For many reasons, they might not be ready, or they might not know, like, or trust you enough. Particularly for higher value products, you need to build that relationship a little bit more. So being present and educating and motivating people to take the next step is a great way of making sure that you're still relevant at the point that they make the decision themselves. A few weeks ago, I'm getting confused on which podcast I was talking about this now. I think it was this. I think it was the Book More Show. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I was talking to someone about a book called Wombat Selling, which is by an Australian academic called Michael Gleason. And that proposition is that you can't make a buying decision for someone. The power to make the buying decision, the kind of checkmate move to close that action, that interaction, lies with the customer. The only thing that you can do is make check moves to always put something in front of people so that creates the environment for that buying decision. So a lot of his work is with sales teams, and rather than sales managers focus on closing, you can't, you're not in control of that. So instead, and that demotivates teams, obviously, and it leads to a lot of churn in sales teams. So the thing that you can be in control of is these check moves, these opportunities to put the buying decision in front of someone. And that's what we're talking about in Profit Activator number 3, staying relevant, staying in front of people, continuing to provide more useful information, so that you're there and present at the point that they make that decision. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. Obviously, we talk a lot about flagship communications and staying in touch with people once they've joined the list, and potentially go through an autorespond sequence then, rather than dropping them at that point or just assuming that they're a dead lead, continuing to send further relevant stuff. And in the real estate space, we talked a lot about market watch emails. So there's obviously a consistent churn of new properties coming onto the market. So that's a very easy way of continuing to be able to deliver information to someone. Might not always be the most relevant if they're looking for a different type of property, but by continuing being able to share something with them, you're more likely to stay front of mind, so that someone can reach out at that point. On the coaching side of our business, we've got the More Cheese Less Whiskers podcast that Dean does. That's a great opportunity for every week to talk about different types of businesses, how the profit activators apply to those. This Book More podcast as well, people who have identified themselves as interested. We're following up regularly with other related information. So fitting a book, sorry, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I hear on a regular basis, I mean, I would go as far as to say daily, from people who, because one of the main questions, the first questions I ask someone whenever they call us about the 90-minute book is, how did you know about us? How did you hear about us? And it all works back to, well, I heard, Dean Jackson on this, or I heard whatever, and it may be that connection, or my friend told me to listen to the podcast, but they said, oh, I'm on your mailing list now. And so I get all of this information from you. And it's really, they start quoting some things that maybe I haven't even paid that close of attention to. So I pull up, that email that went out last Thursday or whatever. And I really see how much that works, really and truly on a daily basis, from people who are just constantly, they're seeing all the things that we put out. And, today's email may not be relevant to what's going on in their business, but tomorrow's might be, and that might be the thing that converts them over, So I see how productive, and I have conversations with people like this on a regular basis, just how to keep, relevant in someone's face, not to be forgotten, so how important it is. And I see it just with us, the success that we have, with our clients.
And it's key, isn't it? I think so often it's easy to put a lot of effort into collecting leads, and there's a lot of industry talk about kind of the churn factor of always be collecting more leads in order to send them something, and then the list will go cold and go dead after a while. And there's so many examples that have personally here, or we've heard about through clients, where a dead list. There's no such thing as a dead list. It's just that those people aren't quite ready at the moment. So
Right.
keep being able to send something to them. Like you were saying, a lot, we've actually got on the future show outline, we've got a note for one of them as kind of what to do next. So now that I've written my book and I'm collecting leads, what do I do now? And a lot of that focus really is around this kind of flagship broadcast, this constant ability to put something in front of people that reminds them that you're still there, and wrapped within that, deliver them the opportunity to take the next step. So people have seen
I think
it.
you just said it. We do focus on collecting the leads, but I think when people don't see an immediate, response or an immediate, onboarding or conversion, people kind of get tired. They just sort of, I don't know if it's lazy is the right word, or they're not happy with what they're seeing. But you just have to keep doing that.
I think there's a couple of.
Okay.
Sorry, I cut across to there.
That's okay. No, I'm just saying at some point either somebody will either remove themselves from your list or they will convert, and like I said, you just have to keep it fresh and keep it consistent, and not give up, that's.
I think there's a couple of things, isn't there? There's such a focus on immediately grabbing people at the point that they're ready to make a buying decision and trying to make that conversion now, and the whole kind of always be closing, and there's an excitement around generating tens or hundreds or thousands of top level leads that play in the long game. There's anyone that's on Dean's list as well. There's we've just started another email mastery group. Just yesterday was the first call with some fresh people in there, some new people in there, and one of the modules in there is playing for the long game, or thinking about the long game. So there's the example, we use a lot of the inquiry management service that surveyed a large cross section of people who had attended physical events like expos, and followed up with them for those people who went there with the intent of buying something, did they buy within 30, 90, 6 months or 2 years or over 2 years? And I forget what the exact numbers were, but it's something like 80% of people bought in the kind of 6 months plus window. So the majority, if you're only focusing on those immediately converting, you're definitely leaving on the table all of those other people that you've spent time and money to collect. And as long as there's a way of being able to keep that conversation going in an effective way for your own business. So I was just talking to someone last week and saying it doesn't really matter whether we're talking about audio or whether we're talking about podcasts or written stuff or video, whatever you within your own business can easily create, either because you've got a particular interest or passion on one thing, or the market is going back to the Market Watch, the realtor example. I mean, new properties coming on the market, you've immediately then got the brochure for the property and all of your knowledge as a realtor of the local area about what the unique characteristics of that property are. So bringing something together that could either be written with images or video is super simple to do these days. Even if you don't want to put your face on the screen, still recording a screenshot, walking through the MLS listing of a new property and highlighting some things that maybe aren't necessarily brought out in just the numbers, kind of adding your knowledge to it. Dean loves audio, is great at sitting down with someone on the phone and really going deep into their business. So audio is super easy for Dean to create, whereas we don't really do that much with video. Whatever is easy for you to do and get out there. I think there's on top of that, there's an element of new leads are just 100% potential. So there's always the possibility that new, fantastic, perfect lead is just in the next person that you're going to engage with. And an old lead that's been sat on the list for 6 months, well, I've tried and they're just not interested. All of that new potential kind of takes away the responsibility or the effort on your part to nurture it. It's always, there's no commitment to potential. It's always 100% opportunity. Whereas managing an existing list can feel like a slog to just go through the numbers, but really the gold is sat in that existing list and just being able to nurture them and develop them in a way that's effective and efficient for you to do, that's really the key to maximizing what the effort that you've already put in to capture the leads in the first place.
Absolutely. I like that. Nurture and develop them. I think that needs to be kept at the forefront right there,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think all of the things like know, like, and trust, and being at the time that the person's ready, and developing that relationship, and removing some of the objections, all of these things that people talk about in sales training and marketing material that's out there, all of that is a long-term game. It's not a commodity business of spending $1,000 on ads and getting 25 clicks through to a site, and then 15 people buying something from a site there and then. For the majority of us, at least, I mean, we did there's a book just coming through the pipeline that's talking about Amazon businesses and how people can maximize that. In that scenario, it is a little bit more, or certainly more of those customers are likely to convert more immediately, because it's more of an immediate response. If someone's searching for something there and then, and your business is to present them with that buying opportunity there and then, for things that are listed on Amazon, for the majority of things at least, then it is a lot more faster conversion. But definitely anyone that's in a consulting business, high ticket items, anything where there's more emotional connection to the buying decision, whether it's buying a physical product or engaging with someone as a service, any ongoing service delivery, anyone that's got a residual element to their business, all of those component parts of know, like, and trust, and building rapport and offering value to people, all of that is a longer-term game than just that immediate conversion. So profit activator number 3, educate and motivate people over time, so that when they're ready, they think of you and you're there to kind of be the other half of that transaction. All of that is in the long term, and that's what we're talking about now, although we've obviously taken quite a while to get to this point. So, but I think it puts in good context.
Yeah, definitely.
So scorecard books, then let's tie this into a specific example. So hopefully we've set the broad context for people. Let's look at a couple of specific examples. So scorecards are, as we're talking about them, particularly a strategic coach tool. So for the last 12 months or so, I think now, Coach have been teaching to a certain number of their groups. I'm not sure how. I think they've talked about it with everyone, but I think it's only the small groups, the more one-to-one groups that have actually gone through and done scorecards, whereas I think they've talked about it with everyone. But the scorecard, and we'll put some links in the show notes so people can go and follow through, but the scorecard is a way of your customer benchmarking themselves against a scorecard, so that it becomes self-evident that they should take this next step, this next action would be beneficial to them, because within the framework of your program, within the framework of your scorecards, you've helped them step through it. They've scored themselves on a scale of 1 to 12. And then in theory, anything that is a particularly low score, that's an obvious place for improvement. So I only use the Profit Activator scorecard as an example as we're talking through, because that's the scorecard associated with the Breakthrough DNA. Again, framework that most people listening are probably familiar with, so it'll just make it a little bit easier. So sticking with the coach example, then, they usually have 8 mindsets, and across the 8 mindsets there are 4 development levels, and across the 4 development levels there's a score of 1 to 12. So for the Breakthrough DNA, for the Profit Activator scorecard, the 8 mindsets are obviously the 8 profit activators. So select a single target market, compel people to raise their hand, educate and motivate, and moving on from there. So looking at mindset number 1, selecting the single target market, some of the lower scores might be that you don't try and select a single target market at all, that you're just in fact targeting anyone and everyone, and any business that you get is good, and you're just trying to cast the net as wide as possible. Level 2 would be something like you focus your efforts, your marketing efforts on whatever the hot trend is right now. So rather than having a long-term strategy, you jump from one thing to the next thing, trying to land on that perfect market. Developing that, as you develop your single target market, you might start to target where your best revenue is, or where you know that you can deliver the best results, so that you're really trying to dial it in on a slightly longer term, something where you can get a return for the longer term. And then the highest level of picking a single target market would be that you dominate a specific area and focus on your largest check clients. So you're really dialing everything in, the marketing activity at least, you're really dialing in on that target market where you can offer the most value, and it's the most valuable to your business. So not too much of an issue on what the exact mindsets are or even the structure, but this concept of creating a book to supercharge your profit activator number 3 level, the way that you educate and motivate people. You can imagine someone that's opted in for a copy of the Breakthrough Blueprint book. This is potentially someone who may or may not know Dean or the work that we've done elsewhere. It appeals to an audience who is looking to accelerate their business. So the crossover audiences we've got with the likes of Michael Hyatt or Frank Kern or Ryan Dice, all of these guys, where other marketing guys, creating the Breakthrough DNA book is a great way, a Profit Activator 2 tool to get people to raise their hand. Okay, now they've done that, what do we do next? We educate and motivate people over time by providing things like the More Cheese, Less Whiskers podcast, because that's very tied in with the 8 Profit Activators as well. So it's a great way of continuing that conversation, but slowly over time starting to develop it. But even that's ticking the education box. So we're educating people more over time through examples of how the 8 Profit Activators can apply to their business. But it's not necessarily doing anything to specifically motivate them to take the next step. So people will see both in the 90-minute book emails that we, or the Book More Show emails that we send out, and any other broadcasts that we send from 90-minute books. Likewise, from the Coaching Side of the Business emails that come from Dean, have all got a super signature on them, where we talk specifically about, here are 3 or 4 ways that I can help you today, and give people ways of taking that next step. So we're trying to capture people when they're ready, but this motivating step is still missing a little bit from all of that. So a scorecard book is a great way of closing that motivation gap. So someone that's already opted into the Breakthrough DNA book, talking about the 8 Profit Activators, they've been introduced to the concept. The scorecard then says, okay, across these 8 Profit Activators that you're now familiar with, how would you score yourself? It's not like we're saying to people, you score badly in this area, or most people are very bad at Profit Activator number 3, motivating and educating people over time. So you obviously need to do X, Y, and Z. It's that we're saying to people, here's a scorecard. Now you can go away and in your own time score yourself against that, and aspirationally, where would you prefer to be? And where that gap is between the actual and the aspirational is then becomes the kind of intrinsic motivation for someone to close that gap and do something about it. And the do something about it that we have in the scorecard book, the Here's What to Do Next, is to go to breakthroughdna.com, watch the videos where we introduce the subject a little bit more, and then join the Breakthrough DNA online program, which is a program that goes through in detail all of the 8 Profit Activators and makes a lot of suggestions on what people can do next. So the scorecard books, again, the specifics of it, whether you choose to do a scorecard or whether you choose to write something that's motivating in a slightly different way, the point that we're trying to get across in this episode is that the books are great for Profit Activator number 2, getting people to raise their hand, but they can also be a powerful motivator to help people make their own decision to take the next step. I think particularly in a way like with the 8 Profit Activators framework, where it's very easy to keep that theme running through all of it, and it becomes self-evident that there's some next steps. But even if your business isn't as closely aligned as that, then there's still a great opportunity to help people develop that and use a book in a slightly different context than we've talked about before. After all that, I definitely need to take a breath because that turned into a very long sentence.
No, I think you're right. The powerful motivator, when they do that scorecard, it really is that in your face, like, answer. I really do need this product, this service, this whatever it is that you're selling or providing. It's sort of that if you're on the fence, it definitely is a way to it takes you over to the next step for sure. When people look at it and do their scorecard.
And I think that's the power, isn't it? We talk quite a lot in the early stages about the kind of landing page for your book in the first place. Don't try and convince them that they've landed on the right page. With the email mastering example that we talked about last week, going from the ad to the landing page, and the landing page, the only thing you can do is opt in. It's allowing people to complete the thought that they've already had, not distract them or potentially make them question it by providing more information. It's just allowing them to complete that thought. Likewise, with something like a scorecard book, it allows them to evidence to themselves that they're in the right place, and that the solution that you're consistently talking about, because you've selected a single target market, because this particular funnel, this campaign is trying to address one group of people, so you know who you're talking to. Having something like a scorecard where they can go through the questions, they can rank themselves on a scale of kind of, in the nicest possible way, incompetent to supremely confident. And it's self-evident that where there's a low score and a gap, particularly if you then ask them, okay, what's your current score and what's your aspirational score? All of this is reinforcing the point that I thought I had a problem in the first place. I knew I wanted to do something about it. Here's some information to help fix that. Here's a way of gauging myself against on a scale of competence, and therefore the suggested way to fix this is even more something that I should do, because I've literally just gone through an exercise where I've reinforced and re-identified that I've clearly got a gap in this particular place.
Exactly. Yes.
So I think some of the other examples then, I think the for anyone that wants to follow through on this particular example, and I think the 8 Profit Activators is a good one to follow through because there's some common language there. So if you haven't already, then head over to profitactivatorscore.com and you'll get the opportunity to fill in your details and get a score back yourself for how you position on the 8 Profit Activators. But more importantly, in the context of the book, at least, you'll get part of the download there is a copy of the Breakthrough DNA book and the scorecard book. So you can see very clearly how the two work together in concert and kind of build on the idea that's been sown in the first place of the 8 Profit Activators you can trigger right now in your business. Some of the other ways that people can use the motivational type, using a book as motivation to encourage people to take that next step. Again, as I say, the scorecard tool is a coach tool. So quite aware that a lot of people listening to this won't have gone through that process and won't have their own scorecard created already. Although it's not necessarily the most difficult thing to do. But if you don't, then that's not the only thing that is fit for purpose in this context. So what we're trying to do is keep the conversation going and allow people to identify themselves and kind of evidence to themselves that your suggested course of action is the right thing for them to do next. So a book is a great way of doing that, but you can also, we talk quite a lot about having that follow-up action that someone can do next. So the call to action on the back of a 90-minute book, we suggest doing something like give people the opportunity to find some more free stuff. So head over to the website and watch some videos where we talk through this idea in a little bit more detail, or a related idea in a bit more detail. Then we suggest having something where they can opt in again to identify themselves as hotter prospects. So head over here for a scorecard or an analysis, or that thing that's going to help people develop their own thought on the idea. They kind of take it to the next step. So it's that second stage. That's what we're talking about here, and developing into this Profit Activator number 3 tool, really taking that, here's some free stuff, and the third call to action on a regular 90-minute book would be join the program, get started now. But that middle step of here's a way that you can learn more and develop more. If you have a way of tying that into something like a scorecard where people can clearly identify themselves on a scale of kind of incompetent to supremely confident, then that, developing that further, whether it's a book or whether it's some other asset, but developing that further is a great way of kind of filling in this motivating step in the middle of, yes, you're going to continue to educate them over time, but this thing that they can complete next, which ideally is very consistent with the words that they've already heard and the problem they've already identified, and really gives them a score or grade or a clear kind of gap analysis of where they are versus where they want to be. It's that plugs the motivation gap in Profit Activator number 3 and helps push those people over the line who are approaching the place of, yes, they're ready to do something, and this thing, your thing, is the thing that they would be best served by doing next.
Yeah, very good. Great.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it's, I mean, the scorecard books, particularly because they are, I mean, it's easier if you've got a scorecard already, or, I mean, if the context of it makes sense, but it's definitely something that's relatively straightforward to do. In the next couple of weeks, we'll release we need to come up with a better name for it, which is what's holding it back slightly, ridiculously enough, but we need to release the author scorecard, which really looks at business books, how to create a lead generating book. So it's not about becoming an author, it's about a lead generating book scorecard. And as you can tell by those clunky words, we haven't quite landed on the perfect title just yet, but over the next couple of weeks we'll have that released and ready for people to download a copy of. And across 8 mindsets for writing a lead generating book to really drive a lot of new business, that will help people to position themselves on the scale that we've just described. So keep an eye out for that, whether or not it's something that you feel you need to do for your own business or writing your own book. Then would recommend download a copy of it anyway, just to see this motivating step, this kind of Profit Activator number 3 tool in action. You can do that today, of course, by going to profitactivatorscore.com and grabbing a copy of the Breakthrough DNA version of it. And again, think about how that translates to your own business of a book that you're writing to engage potentially cold leads to begin with, to make those invisible leads visible, and then following that up with how you can motivate them and almost allow people to the next step to become self-evident that the course of action that you're suggesting is the best thing that they can do at this time. Yeah.
Awesome. Very good.
Okay, so let's, I think we blasted past 30 minutes again pretty quickly. Perfect. So let's draw a line under it there. I mentioned as well that we've got a couple more Facebook ideas that we want to wrap up on. We've got a couple more campaigns running at the moment, so I want to share some of the results of that with you. So a wrap-up show in the next couple of weeks, and then a couple more great ideas coming down the tracks, and some interviews with some existing authors talking about how they're using their books. So had a couple of weeks off, but hitting the ground running again now as we move properly into the summer, and should be an exciting time.
I enjoy hearing our authors come on, and I think those are interesting podcasts to listen to. It really gives that person who's hesitating, like, do I need to write a book? Should I write a book? I really want to write a book. That kind of gives them that push, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just me spouting on both things as well. Exactly. It's always good to hear other.
Seeing the real use of the book and real people doing it. So I enjoy those as well. So
so it's definitely there was a bit of a scheduling, well, not a particular scheduling issue, but scheduling became difficult over the last couple of weeks to get things in. We've got a couple recorded already. We just need to release them into the stream. And then I think we've got at least 6 people, just looking down at the list here, we've got at least 6 people that we've been trying to schedule with. So we should have a nice run of other people coming on the show as well over the next, we'll feed those in over the next couple of months. But there's going to be some good examples. And some of the things, I mean, kind of touched on it very briefly last week. Some of the things that people are doing to really use them and get them out there are quite phenomenal. So, very excited to share those with people over the coming weeks.
That's great. Good stuff. It's always a pleasure.
Okay, thanks again, Betsy. Thanks for your time. Have a great weekend. And everyone listening, as always, head across to 90minutebooks.com/podcast. And this is episode 31. So head over there for the show notes and the transcript. If you have any questions or any particular topics you want us to cover, then just shoot us a message to podcast at 90 Minute Books, or for the general support queries, then just support at 90 Minute Books, and we'll get those messages and follow up accordingly.
Great. Fantastic. Well, have an awesome weekend.
Perfect. You too. Thanks, Betsy. Bye.